Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur. I hope you're having a great week. This is going to be a book tag. It's going to be the Divine Comedy Reader Tag, which Tom at Tom LA Books created and was kind enough to tag me in. Because Tom is doing a weekly video series focusing on each of the individual cantos that make up the full Divine Comedy. And it's a marvel. His affection for the text is so evident, but his wisdom, his insight, what he brings in each of those videos is just amazing. He's midway through the Inferno, so it is not too late to join in. So each of these prompts comes from some, reference in the Divine Comedy. Prompt 1, Virgil and Dante from Canto I in the Inferno. Are you the font that pours so overwhelming a river of human speech? One of your favorite books featuring a master-pupil relationship between two of the main characters. And sometimes those master-pupil or student-teacher relationships can go in a weird direction that I certainly will never take my life in. But one that comes to mind is Skinwalkers by Tony Hillerman. And it's because we get a sort of master pupil in a sense of veteran rookie type mix. And so this is a police procedural set in the Navajo tribal nation. And what Hillerman does is it's the 7th book in his series, and he brings together the protagonists from the first 3 books, Lieutenant Joe Leaphorn, who's sort of a veteran. And so you have this veteran and then a younger, less experienced, police officer working together in a police procedural. But the mix, the twist to it, and Officer Jim Chi was the protagonist of the second 3 books, and so then this is book 7. The twist is that while Leaphorn is more experienced as a detective and investigating homicides and solving mysteries and crimes, in many ways, Leaphorn's character has removed himself from the spiritual and to a lesser extent cultural as well side of Navajo life on the tribal nation, whereas Officer Jim Chi, while younger, has very much embraced that aspect of life and is learning to become a singer and learn some of the songs that his grandfather or other members of the elders of the nation are. They might be one of the only people who know those songs, and so he's working to learn those. And so that you have the police experience mix, but then you have this aspect of how each is embracing his culture differently. And it's just a really marvelous book, and also a great crime novel. It's a fantastic crime novel. But the other one that came to mind was the ways in which Cardinal Wolsey and Thomas Cromwell work as sort of a master student, and even to a certain extent in Wolf Hall, how the different individuals who worked under Thomas More viewed him as their master, and how that sort of comes back full circle within the book. Prompt 2, the Psychedelic Eagle from the Paradiso Canto VIII. In the sky I saw distinctly, born in golden fire, the image of an eagle's head and neck. A book that fired up your visual imagination. And so for me, I think of different nonfiction works I've read that talk about the parts of the world or artifacts from the world, architecture from the world that no longer exists. One of the great ones in my reading was the Byzantium sequence, 3 nonfiction books by John Julius Norwich, and the first one is the early centuries. The second one, the Apogee, is also really, really strong, and it just conjures up a culture that's gone. Some of the art and architecture still exists, particularly in Istanbul and Thessalonica and some other areas, but it just really took my mind to a culture that I had not known much about. Prompt 3, Count Ugolino. Inferno Canto XXXIII. This one's pretty dark. And then hunger had more power than even sorrow had over me. A book you read with such graphic and horrific descriptions that you will never forget them. And thanks to the Codex Cantina, I read Patriotism by Yukio Mishima. And it is a story that centers around a young officer after an insurrection within the Japanese army, based on a real life incident, determined that he's going to commit seppuku and his wife joining him. And the descriptions are quite horrifying. Prompt 4, the Cinematic Archangel from Inferno Canto IX. I saw more than 1,000 souls of the ruined flee before one who strode across the Styx. So what's a book that has not been adapted for cinema that you would make into a movie or TV series if you were a producer of unlimited financial means? Well, obviously the Divine Comedy, but there are plenty of works. But one that I think would be very, very interesting to see And it'd have to be done well, but it would be very, very interesting to see. And that I think it's a book that has, you know, is very much in one character's mind, but I think could be expressed within, you know, a film or a TV show, would be Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And it's a great, great book, and it's extraordinarily well written, but I think there are some interesting scenes from it, particularly in the final like quarter of the book, that would be amazing to see. Prompt 5, The Noble Castle, from Inferno Canto IV. The master of those who know, sitting in a philosopher's family, who look to him and do him honor. He's referring to Aristotle there, who's the master of those who know how to bore you. Your favorite book by a pre-Christian philosopher, or a book about ancient Greece that you like. There's a stack of books about ancient Greece that I like. But a favorite pre-Christian philosopher would be Mencius, who was a later expander, you know, someone who amplified in a certain way and applied the teachings of Confucius. And I love the Mencius. Reread passages from it frequently. Prompt 6, Paolo e Francesca, from Inferno Canto V. Love, which absolves none who are loved from loving. A book of any genre with a love story that you particularly liked as part of the central plot or not. There are lots of books that I find the romance within it is, you know, is almost like there to be like, yeah, this is realistic. People love each other in real life. And then there are the ones that the romance feels like deep and affectionate and important. Possession by A.S. Byatt does that. But one that jumps to mind that is like a very... he's a writer who is not a romantic writer. He's intentionally not romantic. But in this book, he achieves a sequence of romantic relationships, not healthy, not necessarily healthy relationships, but romantic relationships where it feels like there's passion and actual affection for each other, despite the sort of demons around and within the person ruining those different romances. And that would be the final novel in James Ellroy's Underworld USA trilogy, Blood's a Rover. And you have each of the three main characters has a romance that feels natural to that character, and it feels like it contributes something and changes the character. That it's not just, you know, two people meeting where they're at, but the character is sort of turning or rising within life through the romance. And it works in a way that I don't think Ellroy ever succeeds at in any of his other books. The other one that I want to mention, sort of real life. This isn't, I don't know what, this would be a collection of letters, but the letters between E.B. White and his wife, Catherine White. E.B. White is famous for Charlotte's Web, I think for many readers today. But the letters between them are astonishing in the amount of love and sort of like the weird ways in which they reveal how much they love each other, and the ways they want to remind each other of how they love each other. And I am always astonished by when you know, as someone who grew up reading Charlotte's Web, I'm always astonished when I read those letters and see just what an incredibly romantic person each of the Whites was within their marriage. It's an inspiration for me. Prompt 7, Ulysses, from Inferno Canto XXXIII, until the sea had closed up over us. And that's the version of Ulysses that is a heck of a lot more interesting than the Odyssey, personally. Name a book you loved of any genre whose protagonist leads a group of people to follow his or her courage and ambition into an adventure. And kind of going off of the Byzantium, this is The Glory of the Empire, a novel, a history by Jean d'Ormesson. And it is about an unnamed empire that very much feels like it should have existed on Earth and did exist, but is never quite named and doesn't have capitals that are, you know, actual cities that we encounter, but has interactions with other human cultures. It feels to a large degree like a stalking horse for the Byzantine Empire. There's an Alexei, there's a Basil, and Alexei is the one who really just has this astonishing sequence in the sort of the final third of the book that, you know, just there's a trial by combat, there's a rebellion that needs to be put down, there's an empire that is recaptured for one glorious generation, and we know it's going to disintegrate after that, and it's just a marvelous, marvelous book. That it does that, it achieves what so few books, their historical fiction, try to do, which is it takes history and then it tidies it up and manages to make it more interesting, not less interesting. And I think that's something that a lot of historical fiction struggles to do. Prompt 8, Saint Bernard the Poet from Paradiso Canto XXXIII. Love in your womb was fanned to fire again. What is your favorite poetry book in translation? And I've talked about a few. The Binion translation of the Divine Comedy is amazing. I've talked about a few that I've really enjoyed. One that I'm reading right now is the Shahnameh by Ferdowsi, but I haven't finished that. However, a favorite poet I have who wrote in Russian is Anna Akhmatova, and I really, really enjoy her poetry. So, finally, prompt 9, tag someone. I'm going to tag Alan at the Lonely Bookshelf. I will tag, I was trying to find people Tom didn't tag. I will tag Lindsay Bartlett. I will tag Christy Louise at Dostoevsky in Space. Yeah, there's 3 books in the Divine Comedy. There's 3 people. There you go. Thanks, everybody.